can say this about season 4. It is going to be so worth the wait.
Nowhere, actually.
A wrecking machine. I'll take it.
I'm still figuring out my own style, Mark, actually.
It was great.
It took 2 minutes and I had to answer, yeah, go for it.
Are you sure you're not interested? I was like, don't ask me again. I can't refuse it twice.
In Holland, in one country.
Here are these things. She got me so deep and underwater, and I drank it. That's not good.
You'll try chocolate from South Africa to Australia to England. It will taste so different.
So it's been really amazing that it's been with you after 10 long years.
The first title we were messing around with, we were going to call it Lockdown. And then after a while, we actually kind of realised, God, this is dragging on a lot longer than what we thought it was going to be.
I didn't want to give people a reminder.
Our bass player has a band. We were like, let's go on the road, man. But and then it just came to a screeching halt.
We had to work on like how I was biting the carrot. Like I had to do it very purposefully, you know? You didn't want a weak bite, but you didn't want a bite that was too strong.
Someone jumps the stage and one of our techs just body slams him to the ground and you can see me kick him.
I guess I was too distracted. I was having too much fun. Never a bad thing.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Shota. Hello.
Hello, Mark.
Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning. I'm Mark Sugiyama from Eclectic Arts based here in Seattle, Washington. And thank you so much for joining me on this Wednesday, the 19th of May, 2021. My apologies for the delay there. There's a little glitch with my streaming platform. I wanted to make sure it was running. And I look over here and it's running perfectly now. So we're here, and a few things that I'd like to mention before we get to my interview this afternoon. Tomorrow on Thursday, I have 2 scheduled interviews. One is at 12:30 and then another at 2:30. Both are musicians of very different genres. We're going to be looking at power metal, and we're going to be looking at some soul and R&B in the afternoon. And then on Friday, I have 2 wonderful documentary film directors coming together to kind of do a symposium, hang out, talk about their work and everything that they have coming up. And that's at noon on Friday. And then on Saturday, the 22nd of May, the 1-year anniversary of the Alice virtual tour. The whole reason that I'm doing what I'm doing right now with any of these virtual interviews that I'm a part of is because of the wonderful band Alice. So we're going to get back together and talk for a good hour, and then they're going to have their tea time on Zoom right after that for all the fans that want to have a direct virtual experience with the band and ask questions and catch up and tell jokes and all that kind of thing. So it's going to be a really good time on Saturday. And then I do have other things coming up next week already. So if you follow me as Eclectic Arts Media, one word, on Instagram, that's where I post everything first. And then some of that information gets migrated over to Facebook and other social media platforms. If you're here on YouTube and if you're watching me for the first time, if you could subscribe to my channel, that's always appreciated. And if you could like this video stream, that's also appreciated as well. And if you're on the Twitch side of things, if you could follow me over there, that would be great. I really need to spend some more time with Twitch because it's a wonderful platform, and it's just been swamped with work, so trying to get things to where I need to with my Twitch channel is a work in progress. But again, if you follow me over there, that's greatly appreciated. My guest today is a creative of many talents: director, writer, producer, actor, cinematographer, narrator, just to name a few. Her new film, India Sweets and Spices, will make its world premiere at the Tribeca Film Festival on June 12th. Please welcome to the Eclectic Arts Virtual Studio, Deepti Gupta.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Deepti. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I can't wait to dive into your background and everything else because you have such a wide creative skill set that it's going to be amazing. But let's start with first and foremost with the film that you're a part of, India Sweets and Spices. What can you tell people about this? Because I haven't had a chance to see a trailer or anything for this yet.
Yes. It's not out. It's a coming of age story about a young Indian American woman who is growing up in New Jersey and is surrounded by, a community that is predominantly Indian immigrants that live there. And the story is really kind of about secrets and lies that a lot of us keep to survive different situations. And I am a longtime friend of her mother's, but we had lost touch. So we crossed paths again, and India Sweets and Spices is the grocery store that I own, the South Asian grocery store in the neighborhood. And so things unravel, and some secrets are outed that topple the status quo in that community.
Oh wow! Sounds like there's there's a lot going on with this film.
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay, and when did you get involved with the project? Was this before the pandemic or during it or both?
Yeah, we filmed it in 2019. So, you know, nowhere close to the pandemic. We shot it in Atlanta, and we did meet up a couple of times for ADR or things like that during the pandemic.
Okay, all right. And so what about your character, since I haven't had a chance, or no one's had a chance to see the film yet, what is there anything about your character that resonates with you as a person yourself? Is there anything that's kind of similar?
Similar in desire, but different in that as Bhairavi, you know, I took action in my life. As Deepti, I haven't. There's an activist in me that, you know, hasn't taken to the streets and done protests and all that stuff. But as Bhairavi in the film, the story, there's an activism past, growing up in Delhi and kind of just really trying to stand up against patriarchy in a culture that is very patriarchal, and how that impacts when, you know, as young women, me and Sheila, played by Manisha Koirala, we just couldn't get our voices to be heard or be taken seriously. And so now, years later, here we are in the US, and how our lives converge. So for me, this, as role models, you know, women role models are, I find anyway, as growing up, it was very hard for me to find women around me that I could look up and be like, oh yeah, this XYZ can be done. And so I feel like there's still communities where role models, like it's very hard to find. So for me, in playing Bhairavi, I was just delighted to play this part of a businesswoman who runs her store and who's in a partnership with her husband where she's not less than, there's an equality in their marriage. And to me, those are values that are dear. And while the fight against patriarchy in the story, when, you know, I was in Delhi, it didn't quite work out as we wanted, but there's a way in which the spirit of that still continues on, even in my life in the US. And I loved that there's a grit, like a hardness to her.
Okay, well, yeah, that's makes me even that much more intrigued to see the film and see your character in the film. And like you mentioned, in terms of, there sounds like there's so many different themes and topics that it addresses, and that's going to be fascinating to see put into hour and a half, 2 hour film.
And I don't mean to make it sound like it's a serious film. It's a very fun film. Like it's got humor. It's got romance. It's really, really fun.
Okay, well, even better. So with the film making its world premiere on the 12th of June, are you planning to go to New York to be there for the
Yes, festival? I've never been to Tribeca, so I'm going, and we'll see what kind of festival it is. Are we all wearing masks or not wearing them, or how close, or how everything is organized, and they're working hard to figure that out themselves.
Yeah, it's such an interesting transitional time that we're in of okay, so as more people get vaccinated, as more things start to slowly open up, depending on what state you're in, what we're even having that kind of back and forth right here in Seattle of, well, because the CDC said this last week, that means you don't have to wear a mask in certain places, but then it's not consistent anywhere. So it's kind of like, what do we do? So like at Tribeca, I can only imagine for something that size what they're having to go through logistically.
Oh yeah, and people probably flying in from different places, and just all the different events they're holding and the different venue figured out. So it's just it's quite an undertaking.
Yeah, but that's got to be exciting, especially going to a film festival that you have not attended yet, and you get to do it in person and see your film.
Yes.
Yeah, if I was in your position, yeah, I'd be completely over the moon about that.
I'm excited to see it with an audience because, I feel like that allows you as part of the creative team to kind of be a little spy in the audience, be like, how are things landing? What are people laughing at? What are they resonating with? And I think that I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, and that's very well said. I know, like we mentioned pre-show, that for me, starting my film review aspect during the pandemic, it's been hard in that respect because it's just me and my TV. There's nobody around me.
Yes.
That emotional energy, the highs and lows, what resonates, what doesn't resonate, I don't know. It's just whatever resonates with me. And then I can't look at the person next to me or the one behind me or the one down there.
I know, like when I watched Black Panther, there were moments when like you could feel the whole audience sighing, or like we're all holding our breath, and there's just nothing like that experience.
Absolutely. I'm flashbacking to the Return of the King in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and that last scene when everything comes together, you could just feel the emotion in the audience just like pour out, and people were crying and all kinds of things were happening. And you're like, this is the power of cinema when it's working so well with a group of people.
It is. Like you these are strangers, but you still feel connected to them in this like weird, strange way. It's great. It's magical.
Yeah, it's one of those pieces, just like with every live performance, if it's theater, music, opera, ballet, that you have that. It's basically a communal experience when you're there with someone's performing or watching something, and then you're in the audience, and then that exchange of energy goes back and forth. And luckily, again, we seem to be on a path that we're coming back to that.
Yes,
I can't wait for so many different reasons
to get out.
Yeah, just anything, and let alone for people's careers and livelihoods and everything else. Yeah. I think, at least for myself personally, this time, the last 15, 16 months has really told me like what really is important in my life. There's so much time to reflect, especially when things were taken away from me.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, moving forward, I have to remind myself, what changes do I want to make? What things do I want to cut out of my life if they're toxic, like that, and stay that course, because it'll be kind of easy after the initial hump and thrill of being back to just kind of revert.
Slip into that. Exactly. Yeah. Yep. I know. I feel you. I'm the same way. I'm like, there was a way in which the pace changed of our lives, and this kind of rush to get back to before, I'm like, let's slow down. Let's not just go back to exactly before. And I'm really hopeful that that's not possible.
I totally hear you on that. It's like you realize that there was many things that weren't so good about how we were doing things prior to this pandemic. And, if it wasn't anything more than just a pause for you to figure out, why was I doing that? Or why was I a part of that? Here's how we can make this better. Or here's how we need to address something.
Yeah.
Let's carry that forward so that we actually learned our lesson instead of just going back to however it was. And I'm just glad I get to do what I was doing. It's like, well, there's a lot of other people that maybe can't do that, and they need their opportunities too. So there's and then there's lots of other things out in society that we need to push forward with now that we've had this time for a variety of reasons of why there's many things to work on, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And one thing I absolutely want to talk to you about with your background is, please tell me about your foray into film. It sounds like it was through cinematography. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So I am not a cinematographer. There is a cinematographer, Deepti Gupta.
Oh,
but I am not her. And, she's not really on social media and doesn't have a website. So every now and then people reach out to me thinking I am a cinematographer, and I have to be like, no, I am not the Deepti you're looking for. So I have not been, I've only been behind camera as a director and producer, but not really as a cinematographer.
Okay, well, my apologies.
That's okay. It's a very easy mistake to make.
Because even when I looked at it, I know, I think like on IMDb, you're listed first as actor, writer, director, and then there's a 2, and then that's the one that says cinematographer.
Oh, so there is a wrong credit under my credits that should belong to her.
I'll have to look or something, but
yeah,
kind of like, oh, because I'd love to hear more about the lenses you use and the things that
you These two lenses is what I use.
Well, let's talk about then. How did you get involved with film from the get-go? So how far back do we go? As a child, teenager, or young adult?
The first film I did was when I was, I think, 20 years old in Delhi. And it's called Nirankush. And it was about female infanticide in Rajasthan, which is a northwestern state in India. In villages and small towns, when a girl was born, they didn't want girls. So they would basically put her in an earthen pot as soon as she was born and essentially suffocate the child and bury her. And so in the story, I am a journalist and I go to this village because I've heard and I want to know more about this. And then, it's like when the outsider gets involved and you can't help but get involved because of the way in which your humanity kind of pulls you in. You can't just be a bystander. And so I get involved in talking to the women and be like, why are you letting this happen? And then the men get all riled up. And so it's a political story, and it was my first time as a lead in the film, and we shot it in Rajasthan, which is a desert state. So I got to see the Indian desert for the first time. And if you've ever been to like a sandy desert, the moonlit nights are just to die for. Sorry, that was a lot I gave you.
No, that's great. No, that's extremely picturesque, and I love how you described everything. And so, if that was when you're around 20 and your first lead, so were you doing smaller roles and commercials and possibly like live theater prior to that, then? Or
I was doing theater before that, in Delhi University, where I went for my undergrad. The college that I went to was Kirorimal College, and we had a drama society, so it kind of works differently, but each college is within the university, and each college, you can take every subject in each college. And so we had a drama society where I acted and directed and produced and everything. And there was a theater company in Delhi that I was working with. So I started out more in theater, and then slowly on camera started to happen.
Okay, all right. So what drew you to that world to begin with?
This is what, I feel like past is so, as you grow older, you kind of, different things start to make different sense in perspective. But where I am today, I think I was about maybe 8 years old. And my youngest aunt used to live with us, and she was in college and she was in a play. And so my parents took me to go see her in this play. And she played this like awful, mean mother-in-law. And I watched her. And then when I went backstage to see her, she was just sobbing, heartbroken. And I just was like, oh my God, what is this magic? Like here on stage, she was this like, you hated her, and here's this woman who's just my aunt, who's like, oh, what was this? And I guess subconsciously it just kind of started to seep in, and then I would pick up comic books and start to dramatize them during summer break with my cousins and friends, and it just, in whatever way I could, I was hooked, I guess.
Okay, well, I'm always just curious about that, because it's different for every person, obviously. And
yeah.
Got into the arts world, especially if it's the theater / film TV world, and there's lots of ups and downs with it. And how long was your career in India before you started branching out into other countries? Because obviously, right now you're in the U.S.
Yeah, I was in India just a little bit after I finished my undergrad, and then I went to Singapore to do an MA in theater studies because I wanted to go to Mumbai, but that scared my father because it is the industry is changing, but it was definitely a lot more male dominated, and as a woman, you had to be really careful. So anyway, things worked out that I went to Singapore to do an MA in theater studies, but I sent my resume to all the theater companies that I could find, and I was like, hey, I'm new to town. I'd love to work with you and whatever I could do. And soon I was doing theater. I was doing backstage stuff, acting. I did some television there. I just had to. And I directed a couple of plays there as well. So it was just a great time.
Wow. Okay. And when did you eventually come to the U.S. and do your work over here?
Yeah, I came to the U.S. 20 years ago, a couple of weeks before 9/11 happened, actually. I came here to do my master's, my MFA in acting from UT Austin, when they had an MFA program in acting. And that was just, I realized in Singapore that clearly this is what I want to do. Even though what I was studying there was like going to prepare me to be an academic. I was writing a thesis and all of that stuff, and I just was not interested. My supervisor had a hard time with me. He's like, where are your pages? Where are your chapters? And I was like, ugh. So I came to the US. I decided that if this is what I want to do, I'm going to study it more. And little did I understand then that as an artist, your learning never ends. Like you're perpetually in school. And now I'm realizing that.
Wow, that's amazing. The journey you've had with your professional career and where it's taken you, and the fact that it sounds like, based on what you said, that when your time in Singapore, that you weren't really interested in the thesis aspect of your program. That
at all.
Yeah, you just wanted to do. You wanted to be in there,
yes,
acting or on stage or directing or behind, the scenes kinds of things, instead of like writing about it.
Yeah, exactly. I appreciate all the work that people have written about theater, and similarly for film, I'm sure. And I learned a lot from that. But I myself just was like, I can't sit down at a desk and write papers. It's just not me.
I can relate to that, because a long time ago I started off right out of college as a public school teacher. And at some point, at least here in Washington State, then you need to convert that into, you need to enroll in a master's program or something back then. And I was kind of like, so what am I going to focus on? What's my passion? And I was like, I don't really have one. I just rather be here doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And that's it's somewhat similar of like, I don't want to spend all this time and money trying to do something. Well, I understand, like for the person next to me, it might be completely floating their boat and makes them fulfilled and everything else to get that paper written. I'm looking at it like I could be doing so many other things than doing.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and again, I'm just like you. More power to you if that's what you love and that's what works for you. But for some other people, it's like, I just kind of need to be doing it. It's no different than like if you're a classically trained musician or artist, and other people want to be self-taught, and there's pros and cons to both. So it's like, as long as you have a way to express yourself, then to me, that seems to be the path to go on. And sometimes you don't need these other kind of extraneous things. Maybe the industry, or even sometimes just people around you say, you need to do this. It's like, well, no, I don't. I have a run of shows coming up. That's what I need to prepare for. I don't need to prepare for that. Maybe later, but not right now.
It's true. And the thing that I've learned is there's no, especially if you're pursuing an artistic career, but even with other professions more and more, I feel like there's no straight path. There's not you get this job, then you get a promotion, and then you get a promotion, and then you become a blah, blah. It's just, there's so more unknown and unpredictability in an artistic career that I think even for me, it has taken time to really accept that, because I didn't grow up in a family where anybody pursued a profession like this. We all, people in my family all have jobs. And so they don't even fully sometimes understand how it is that I'm doing what I'm doing.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you about that, about and you just already kind of mentioned that, yeah, your family maybe. So what was that like when you first were like fully invested in an artistic career? What was your family's reaction to that? Were they trying to steer you out of it and trying to get you to become, something business or doctor, lawyer stuff?
Yeah, I mean, my father wanted me to be an engineer, and I'm good with sciences, not, but did I want to sit and study for 4 years? No. And I kind of did theater workshops in school or this or that. But I think my father never thought that I was serious. He just thought, all right, like kids do things. And so when finally I told him that this is what I wanted to do, I now can have perspective and imagine that he almost must have had a heart attack. Just like, oh my God, like this is like the worst possible thing she could have said to me. And he gave me reasons for why I was not going to be successful and all that. And he and I didn't speak for like a month and a half or 2 as we were in the same house. And finally he relented and he was like, well, if you're going to do it, you're going to go study at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts in England. And I was like, oh, okay. So I applied, didn't get in. And then there's an acting school in Delhi, National School of Drama. I applied there and I got to the final round, but then I didn't get in. And I think he was really worried that this thing that I wanted to do, how will I do if these institutions are taking me in? And so I think part of that, going to Singapore and pursuing an academic degree was creating that safeguard for me. But I couldn't do that. So I think slowly, once they realized that I can stand on my own 2 feet, I can survive, I can make a living, that people are not taking advantage of me, that I can take care of myself, I think slowly they became more comfortable. And when I was in New York, I did a bunch of Pakistani TV shows. So that was in Hindi, Urdu, which they can understand a lot better. I mean, not that they don't understand English, but there's just a storytelling that's different in Hindi and Urdu. And those shows were online or sometimes telecast in India. So that made them see what I could do and just kind of, I feel like in some ways we never stop proving to our parents that like, hey, I did it. So step by step.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. That's it resonates with me quite a bit. And I don't. My mom's probably watching this right now. She watches all these live streams. So it's fine. And sometimes because she's watching them, my dad's watching too. But I understand from their perspective. They want me to be safe. They want me to have a good career. They want me to have a foundation. And my parents are really an interesting mix of that because my dad's the practical one, and then my mom's the more like let's have fun one. So you would
Same
think,
here.
Yeah, you would think putting that together, I'd come out, pretty well balanced, and I really didn't. I leaned more towards my mom's side of things. But I think even just on a small level for me, when I started doing photography many years ago, it's kind of like, well, he's just doing something for fun. We don't really know exactly what this is. And then it wasn't until I got published that it's like, oh, so someone actually wanted to put one of your pictures in this. It's like,
yeah, there's something about this like validation from the outside world that just seems to be even more important in an artistic career. And I still haven't been able to undo the knot of that.
Yeah, and it actually makes me think that there's probably a documentary in that somewhere. That whole idea, because it's so universal for artistic people, of that validation from family or friends or anybody else of like, why is that there when so many other careers don't have that?
Yes. Yeah, like an engineer, the parents don't have to be like, awesome, the engineer goes. And, I mean, I'm generalizing. There's all kinds of engineering professions, but there's, or like a doctor that's around, needing people to be like, yeah, you're a doctor, yay.
Yeah, look how many patients I worked on today. like that. Yeah, that doesn't happen. But yeah, as a actor or a musician or someone that's behind the scenes on those things, it's kind of like until they can see it, they don't really know what you actually do, or there's actually a career of any level, even if it's not completely professional, if it's semi-professional, amateur, whatever. It's kind of, what are you spending all this time on? I don't get it.
Yeah, I remember years ago, my mom would, I was new to the US and she would call me and she was like, so what do you do in a day? And I was like, she's had a job all her life, so her day is pretty regimented. And I just was at a loss to explain to her what I do in a day. Almost felt like, oh my God, I'm not doing anything in here. What am I doing if I can't tell her how I'm spending my time? It's so crazy.
Oh yeah, well, and you kind of think about it, how relatable that is for this last year. If you ask, like, what were you doing for for your average day,
right?
It's like, especially for creative folks, it's like, well, the sets are closed down, the productions are closed down, I can't do anything, so I'm working on this. And they might be looking at that takes all day. What are you doing the next day?
Yeah. Like, what's the output? The output seems so much more important than just whatever the creative process is.
Yeah, for sure. It's like that whole end result. It's like, there's many steps to get to that. And that's what I'm working on right now. So, and sometimes it's planting seeds, so they can grow later, and making connections, which I'm sure you're fully aware of that. A lot of times it is who you know or who you worked with, and they want to have you come back, and they have.
And sometimes it's seeds you don't even plant. You just end up dropping, and then suddenly it's like a plant with fruits, and you're like, oh, I didn't think that could happen. It's kind of how I ended up in this film, really. When I was new to LA 10 years ago, I went to meet a manager, a friend of mine recommended, and I had a decent meeting with him, and I was looking at his roster on IMDb, and I saw Geeta Malik, and I was like, oh, this was the time when it was like, oh, he has one Indian person, he probably doesn't want me. And so I was curious about her, probably from a place of like, who is she? Let me see. So I looked her up, and I just fell in love with, what she's about, the stories she wanted to tell, the short films she had made at that point and everything. So I reached out to her and I said, hey, I'm new to LA. I'd love to meet for coffee and just, meet you. And so we met and just kind of got in touch. And I ran a monthly script reading series in LA for 4 years. So she was part of that. And then when I made my short film, she was the first person I was like, can you help me make this? I didn't really have a network in LA like I did in New York. And so she helped me produce the short film. And I never expected that I would be sitting here today talking about a feature film in Tribeca Film Festival that she wrote and directed. Like, that's just, it just happened.
Well, and that's one of those, wonderful things about life. I mean, sometimes you can't predict it. Like you said, it's something you didn't even plan on trying to plant something like this. It just kind of curiosity or just kind of organically happened. And then, from this to this to this to this, and then you're like, here we are. You'll be heading to New York to be a part of this film festival with this film with someone that you met many years ago. And like we were talking pre-show, almost everything that I've done with Eclectic Arts is completely organic, including the film stuff. It's like, I didn't set out to, I think I want to start reviewing films. That's my goal. That's my mission in life. And I was like, no, it's completely organic happened. And I'm so grateful that things like that happen for whatever reason. And they just continue to kind of just go whichever way they go. So like if somebody asked me, Mark, what do you think you'll be covering a year from now? There's probably something new that I just don't know yet. And that's fun, and that's exciting when you can add something else to the roster, to the arsenal that you work with. So,
and that's part of the creative process too, curiosity and kind of just not being afraid of it, but really following that. And like you said so beautifully how you've been able to do that, and we wouldn't be talking here if it wasn't for your curiosity.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, and that's one of the things that I just kind of trips me out when I take a moment to step back from myself and just kind of look at things. And all the amazing people I've had a chance to talk to during this time, and people I've gotten to know. And I see hi Ash and Dragon, nice of you to join us here on the stream. That's somebody who's a fan of the Soap Girls, which is a band from South Africa that I've interviewed. So I've gotten to meet people like this virtually who follow me and support what I do, and it's been like this really interesting building of community virtually. So I can't wait to eventually maybe come across people in person.
Yes.
We started off in the virtual world, and now here you are in front of me, either on a stage or if it's a fan next to me or any of that kind of stuff.
That would be like a full circle in a way.
Yeah, for sure. I'm thinking back to last July, one of the actresses that I interviewed, she was saying, Mark, so you live in Washington. I said, have you ever been to Orcas Island? I was like, I've been going to Orcas Island since I was 3 with my family. It's like, why do you ask that? Because most people aren't aware of what that island is or even that it's here. And she said her sister lives there. So I'm like, and she goes up there maybe like once a year, once every 2 years. So I was like, well, next time you come in here, I know you have to take a ferry to get to that island. Make sure you stop through Seattle and we'll try to catch up or do something. So it's going to be like all these kind of connections I've made, again, virtually. I can't wait to actually see them take this next step somehow.
Yeah.
If I get lucky or if I end up going somewhere, it's like, well, I'm down in LA or I'm down wherever. It's going to be fascinating to have these worlds come together.
Oh, yeah. I recently did a stage reading. I've done a bunch of kind of theater stage readings during this time. And I did one recently that if we were not in this virtual world, there's no way I would have done that, because they would have tried to find someone locally. But because we've become more open to, let me see, like the scope is wider. And I got to do this stage reading of a play on the life of Merle Oberon, who was the first South Asian, even though she didn't claim her identity, actress in Hollywood to be nominated for an Oscar back in the early 1900s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. And was that also, I hope I didn't get this information wrong, haven't you also narrated some audiobooks?
I have. I, in fact, just this week am working on one. I narrate a lot of audiobooks, a lot of South Asian authors, South Asian female authors. And I just find it's opened up a whole other world. I mean, I have my BA in English literature, so I, read literature. That's something that I love. But being able to narrate, and I get to do all the characters and create the world in the audio format. It's been an amazing kind of boon. And in terms of as a working actor, it allows me to work consistently and be able to have health insurance.
Well, then you win on all fronts then. You get to check something.
It is. And during the pandemic, a lot of actors have realized that, doing audiobooks is actually a real deal. It's a SAG-AFTRA job. You can do it from your home as long as you have a good setup. And the audiobook community on the whole is very welcoming. And I have found friends and mentors and people who've supported me in a way that in TV and film sometimes doesn't exist. And maybe it's because we're still a newer community, that we're still kind of like supporting each other, and it's expanding, especially this year. I think SAG-AFTRA has added a lot more narrators to kind of, or a lot of actors have also become narrators. But it's a job that I get to do from home, and I get to learn a lot from nonfiction and fiction books. And recently I narrated this book called The Parted Earth by Anjali and Jetty. And it's a multi-generational story that starts at the time when India and Pakistan partitioned and the British had left India. And kind of it explores epigenetic trauma and how ways in which it kind of continues on until one generation decides to stop it. Beautifully written book. And, I got to tell all of that story. So it's, I never thought I would be narrating audiobooks, like what you were saying. It's not like I was like, I'm going to narrate audiobooks. it just kind of happened, and you kind of go on that ride and see how it is.
That's awesome. I think what's really great too with the audiobook thing is that as podcasts have taken off, I think it just kind of filtered out into audiobooks and anything else that I think people kind of forget, and even I forgot for a while, that sometimes when people are watching these live streams, they're actually not watching it. They're just listening to it while they're doing something else. So they're the talking part. And it said that really shouldn't surprise me, because I listen to sports radio every now and then, and I'm doing something, and all I'm hearing is just voices talk about, the Seahawks or the Mariners or whatever. And so why wouldn't people want to listen to an entertainment interview or an audiobook story or anything else? So that market's really grown so much. That I guess it's kind of strange that we're kind of going back to what it was like when people would huddle around a radio on a Saturday.
I remember when I was a kid, Saturdays, there was this story section that used to come on the radio, and I kind of faintly remember the jingle as well. And it used to be just like, story, and you could just lay or whatever and just imagine your own version of it as you're listening to the words. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah, and that's why that's really nice that all these years later, we're going back to that world of people listening and then creating and imagining things in their own mind of where their imagination basically takes them with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Deepti, it's been really amazing talking to you and getting to know your career, and with the world premiere coming up, is there anything else that we should be aware of beyond the film that might be coming up later this summer, or other projects that you have in the pipeline?
So I got to do 2 animation shows recently, and one is going to be on Netflix. It's called Ghee Happy, and it's for, I guess, preschoolers and elementary school kids. It's taking Hindu deities and kind of reimagining the world with them. It's really great, fun show. And then I got to do Kung Fu Panda TV series animation. It's coming out this fall. I don't know how much I'm supposed to say about that, so I'm not going to say anymore. But that's very exciting. I've never done animation before, so I got to do that, and that's its own set of skills that I had to learn.
Oh, that's awesome. I worked at a computer company that did primarily internet animation, so I was doing the audio part of it.
Oh, cool.
So I got to see voice actors come in and, basically bring these parts to life. And sometimes they were so good that the animators would go back and change things that actually fit that actor's expressions and everything else.
Yes. Oh, it is really a collaborative process that I didn't understand until I got to do one.
Yeah, it's amazing to watch that kind of stuff. And I used to sometimes forget that I was supposed to be doing work when they were recording things. I would just be like laughing or getting engrossed in what they were doing. It's like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't change something. We'd have to do another take of that. Then they wouldn't be too happy with me. But it's like, no, you're so good. I was just not paying attention. But that sounds really exciting. And of course, so we have the film India Sweets and Spices, everybody. It's going to world premiere again, June 12th, Tribeca Film Festival in New York.
Please see it online. It's available to watch online as part of the festival.
Oh, that's right. Tribeca at Home.
Yes.
Their virtual program that they have. And I know maybe I'll get a chance to be a part of that. We'll see. They're not making announcements on that till later this month, I think. But I'll find out. Yeah. But it was a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much for taking the time. And I wish you every success with the film and all your other projects you have coming up.
Thank you so much, Mark. It was such a pleasure to talk to you as well.
Thank you. Stay safe down there, and maybe I'll get a chance to talk to you sooner than later.
I will look forward to it.
Okay. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.
You too. Bye.